Let me ask you something most e-com gurus are too scared to ask. Why does growth actually make your business harder? And why is it that every time sales go up, stress goes up even faster? Why does every big month lead to more chaos, more late nights, more breakdowns? And why does your team get overwhelmed? Why do margins disappear? And why do delays and mistakes multiply? Why does it feel like the more successful you become, the messier everything gets? If you ever thought scaling shouldn't feel like this painful, you're right. It should not. And today I'm going to show you exactly why it does and how the most scalable, profitable, operationally elite DTC brands on the planet have solved it in a completely different way. But first, let me make something very clear. This is not your fault because everyone has been teaching you the wrong way to think about growth. The big lie we've been sold: marketing drives growth, better ads, bigger brand. You've been told your whole career that marketing is the engine of growth. Fix your ads, build a better funnel, spend more and scale. Cool, let's play that out. You finally get the ads to work. Sales take off, ROAS looks great, and then what happens? You ran out of inventory, your 3PL melts down, your freight gets stuck, and your team burns out. Your cash flow dies, your margins vanish. Suddenly, growth becomes the very thing that breaks you. If this sounds familiar, because here's the truth nobody talks about. Marketing shows you the demand, but your supply chain determines if you can actually deliver. And that is where everything starts to crumble. Not because you're bad at what you do, not because you don't work hard enough, not because you're not ready, but because you've been building on the wrong foundation. Your supply chain is not broken, it's built wrong. It was never designed to handle real growth, real pressure, real volume, and that's why every time you try to scale, the wheels come off. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what's actually causing the chaos. I'm going to introduce you to the framework we've used inside 50 plus high growth DTC brands, a framework that turns your supply chain from a constant bottleneck into the biggest competitive advantage. And by the end, you'll finally understand why your business feels heavy and how to build a system that makes growth feel easier the bigger you get. Let's get painfully real for a second, because if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still constantly putting out fires, I want you to know you're not alone. And it's not because you're not smart enough or experienced enough or ready to scale. It's because this is exactly what happens when you try to grow on a supply chain that wasn't built to handle momentum. Let me show you what I mean. A brand we worked with spent 80K scaling ads. ROAS was amazing, influencers were posting, they were crushing it. And then their 3PL sent the email no founder want to see. We're 5 days behind on inbound. Your containers are waiting. In translation, your product is sitting on pallets, not being checked in, not shipping out. And guess what? The ads were still running. Orders were still coming in. Customers were still buying until they were not. Refunds exploded, support tickets piled up, cash dried out, and in 10 days, they lost the profit it took 3 months to build. The problem was not marketing. The problem was execution. Marketing did its job, and supply chain didn't. Another founder told me, our factory is killing us. They're always late. So we audited the timeline. And here's what actually happened. Packaging design started 3 weeks late. Trim approvals were delayed. BOM was missing details. PO was not finalized on time. And team missed 3 internal deadlines. The factory, they were only 4 days late. The brand delayed themselves by 42 days. Delays don't start in China. Delays start and click up. And this wasn't a factory problem, it was an operations problem. A seven-figure brand told me, we're fine, we have 60% margin. So I asked, is that before or after freight? Before. Duties? Before. Packaging? Before. 3PL? Before. Their real margin? 22%. And they couldn't figure out why cash was always tight, why they couldn't hire, why growth felt like suffocation. And they were not scaling a brand, they were scaling a lie. And are you starting to see it? It's not marketing, it's finding the right agency. They were scaling a lie. Are you starting to see it? It's not marketing, it's not finding the right agency, it's not working harder, it's not the system underneath. And if that system is weak, every attempt to scale will expose it. And that's the most important thing I want you to understand. You don't have random problems, you have a broken design. But here's the good news. Once you see the system, you can rebuild the system. And once you rebuild it the right way, scaling actually becomes easier. Now let me show you how. This is the MOVE supply chain flywheel. 4 connected forces that determine whether your business compounds or collapses. When these forces are aligned and built in the right order, each turn of the wheel creates momentum. Your brands gets faster, stronger, and more profitable with every cycle. When one force is weak, the flywheel drags. It loses energy. And the same problems keep showing up again and again. Now let's break it down. 1. M for margins. This is your fuel. Margins are not profit. Margins are power. They fund your people. They buy you leverage. They let you survive delays. They decide whether you scale clean or crush hard. Every strong supply chain starts here. Next is O, operations or your flow. Operations are how money turns into motion. It's your flow, how information, timelines, and decisions move through your business. When operations are tight, launches hit on time. When they're messy, everything bottlenecks. Ops doesn't just manage, it controls the rhythm of your entire brand. Next is V for vendors. This is your power. Your vendors are not just suppliers. They're your growth ceiling. If they can't scale, you can't scale. If they lack flexibility, you lose margin. If you only have one, you're hostage. But when you manage vendors strategically, you gain capacity, innovation, and cost control. Lastly, E or execution. This is your pressure test. Execution is where everything gets tested under real pressure. BFCM, new launches, virality, or sudden demand, executions doesn't create problems, it reveals them. If your flywheel is strong, execution scales smoothly. If it's weak, everything breaks. And here's the most important part. These layers are not random. They are sequential. Margins fund operations. Operations enable vendors. Vendors support execution. Execution feeds back into a stronger margins. Move. That's how momentum builds. That's how growth compounds when you build them out of order. You create friction. When you build them in order, you create flow. And every time you run a product launch, reorder, or new campaign, the flywheel spins again. Each turn compounds profit, speed, stability, and that's how top-tier brands scale with ease, not chaos. This is the foundation, and over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through each layer of the MOVE flywheel. So you can see where your own system is strong and where it's silently leaking. Let's start with the one every founder thinks they understand, but almost everyone gets wrong. Let's start at the foundation of everything, margins. And I'm not talking about your COGS spreadsheet margin. I'm talking about your real margin, the one that decides whether your business grows or bleeds out every time you scale. A founder once told me, we're fine, we have 60% margins. So I asked, is that before or after freight, duties, packaging, 3PL? And their real margin after all of those is 22%, and they couldn't figure out why cash was always tight, why they couldn't hire, why every launch made them feel broke again. They were not scaling profit, they were scaling a lie. Most founders think margins are a result. They're not. Margins are a design decision. You design your margins before you ever make the product, before the sample, before the campaign, before margins determine everything that happens next. Margins buy you time. Margins buy you leverage, buy you peace, and when you have real margin, you can negotiate better vendor terms. You can absorb delays without panic. You can invest in better freight or packaging. You can actually pay your people on time. When you don't, every single hiccup becomes a crisis. You don't scale with revenue, you scale with margins. Revenue makes noise, margin builds power. If you're at 1 to 5 million and your margins are off by even 5%, that's the difference between hiring your next operator or bleeding out slowly while trying to scale. When your margins are strong, your flywheel spins faster because margins fund your operations. Strong operations make vendors perform. Better vendors improve your execution, and execution creates even better margins. That's why M is the bottom of the flywheel. It's the fuel that drives everything else. If your margins are weak, it doesn't matter how great your marketing is. It doesn't matter how many orders you get. You'll still run out of cash, run out of leverage, and run out of energy. That's the brutal truth nobody tells you. But here's the flip side. When you fix your margins, everything gets easier because now you can actually afford to win. These are the questions we ask every brand before we fix anything else, because until we see the truth about your margins, nothing else matters. Margins are your foundation, they're your fuel, and they're your survival strategy. If you don't fix them first, your flywheel will never spin cleanly. Now, once your margins are healthy, you can turn that fuel into motion. That's where operations comes in. But fuel without flow, that's just pressure waiting to explode. This is where most seven-figure founders hit the wall. They've got cash, they've got demand, they've got a great product, but the flow between ideas, vendors, timelines, and deliverables is pure chaos. Operations isn't project management. It's not Asana. It's not an assistant updating spreadsheets. Operations is the rhythm of your business. It's the system that connects every moving part from design, sourcing, production, freight, fulfillment, and cash. When operations flow, your launches hit on time, your vendors move in sync, and your team finally stops firefighting. And when they don't, you bleed money in ways you can't even see. You know what I hear all the time? Our factory delayed our order again. No, they actually did not. When we traced timelines, we found that factories are really the bottleneck. The real delays, design approvals that drag, packaging decisions that stall, specs that are not finalized, emails sitting in inboxes for days. Most brands lose 20 to 40 days before a PO is even sent. That's not supplier's delay, that's ops delay. If your operations are weak, you don't have a supply chain and have a series of expensive surprises. But when you build operational flow, suddenly everything clicks. Your term knows dependencies, your timeline are predictable, and you can actually trust your calendar again. That's not luck, that's a system design. Great ops team run like air traffic control. They see bottlenecks before they happen. They communicate across vendors, freight, and marketing. They run postmortems on every launch to make the next cycle cleaner. This is how you turn margin into momentum. Because here's the thing, you can have perfect margins and still be broke if you're constantly late. Every delay is lost sales. Every missed deadline is wasted cash. Every miscommunication is emergency freight. Those tiny operational mistakes, they destroy profit faster than tariffs ever could. Operations is how your business breathes. It gives rhythm to your cash flow, clarity to your team, and control to your decision. When you get ops right, you stop managing chaos and start managing progress. And once your operations are flowing, you're ready for the next layer. Because all that flow is worthless if the people you depend on, your vendors, can't keep up. Let's talk about one of the most underestimated forces in your business: vendors. Because the truth is, you don't scale with ads, you scale with vendors. Your vendors decide more about your future than your customers ever will. If they can't scale, you can't scale. If they can't deliver, your launch dies. And if they raise prices, your margins bleed. And if you only have one, you're not running a business, you're being held hostage. I see it all the time. A brand has the trusted supplier they worked with for years. They think loyalty is stability. Then one day, that supplier gets busy, changes terms, or doubles MOQs. And suddenly, the entire brand is paralyzed. That's not a relationship. That's a liability. And that is why every scalable brand runs a dual vendor strategy. One is your primary, your go-to for consistent volume and trust. The other is your backup for flexibility, negotiation, leverage, and risk control. The goal is not to find a perfect vendor. It's to build a portfolio of leverage. Because here's the secret no one tells you. Vendors perform at the level of your management, not your luck. You get what you measure, you get what you communicate. You get what you demand clearly and fairly. We score every vendor across 5 dimensions: quality, lead time, cost, communication, flexibility. And then we show them the score. Within 60 days, vendors start improving automatically because when you track it, they respect it. You've probably been told to negotiate harder. That's the worst advice in supply chain. You don't win with price, you win with partnership. Because great vendors will save you money through speed, accuracy, and consistency long before you ever talk about cost. And when your vendors win, you get faster lead times, you get priority production, you get better payment terms, you get first access to innovation. That is power, and that's what vendors bring to your flywheel. If one vendor can break your brand, you don't have a partnership. You have a single point of failure. But when you treat vendors as part of your system, you gain control, you gain predictability, you gain scale. Strong brands strengthen your execution. Strong execution protects your margin. Better margins attracts even stronger vendors. It's all connected. This is why in the MOVE Flywheel, vendor is power. They multiply everything that comes before them, margins and operations, and they make executions possible. Because when vendors move in sync with your team, your supply chain becomes unstoppable. Now let's talk about the next layer, the one that tests everything you've built so far. This is the part every founder obsesses over: execution. Before, when things go wrong, this is the layer that takes the blame: the factory, the freight, the warehouse, the fulfillment team. But here's the reality: execution doesn't create chaos, it reveals it. Every big sales spike, every brand launch, every product launch, every BFCM, every viral moment is not a success test, it's a stress test. Execution is the mirror that shows you whether your margins, operations, and vendors were ready. If your flywheel is strong, execution feels smooth. If it's weak, execution breaks everything. I've seen this play out 100 times. A brand finally goes viral, orders pour in, sales triple overnight, and then everything starts cracking. 3PL cannot keep up, freight costs spike, vendors miss deadline, cash dries out. Customers complain and they think it's an ops emergency. It's not. It's a design flaw that execution finally exposed. Execution reflects the truth of your system. If your margins are thin, you cannot afford mistakes. If your operations are messy, you cannot manage volume. If your margins are thin, you can't afford mistakes. If your operations are messy, you cannot manage volume. If your vendors are weak, you cannot fulfill demand. And the moment you hit pressure, the weakest layer breaks first. That's why order matters, because most founders build their business upside down. They start with execution. Let's ship faster. Let's hire 3PL. Let's optimize fulfillment. Then when things break, they try to patch vendors, tweak ops, fix margins, and it just keeps repeating. That's the cycle of burnout. When you build the flywheel backwards, it fights itself. When you build it in order, margins, operations, vendors, and execution, each layer fuels the next. Margins fund operations. Operations enable vendors. Vendors support execution. Executions feeds back into stronger margins. That's how momentum compounds. And every time you launch your order or scale, the flywheel spins again. And when it's designed right, each turn gets easier, faster, and more profitable. Your vendors improve, your ops sharpen, your margins widen, and your team moves like one unit. You stop hassling for growth, you start compounding it, and that's the power of a well-designed supply chain. It turns pressure into progress, it turns stress into speed, and it turns chaos into control. Every cycle makes the next one smoother. That's how great brands scale, not by working harder, but by working in sequence. And here's the catch: you can't fix what you can't see. Most founders don't know which layer is actually breaking. They just feel the symptoms: late shipments, cash crunches, vendor drama, burned out teams. But the root cause, it's invisible until now. So let me show you how to find it. Now that you've seen the system, the MOVE supply chain flywheel, you probably already know which layer feels off in your business. Maybe your margins look good on paper, but cash flow still feels tight. Or maybe your ops are busy, but nothing ever seems to land on time. Maybe your vendors have leverage over you, and you know one bad call could derail an entire launch. Or maybe you just don't know where to start fixing it. That's exactly why I built something for you. Something that gives you visibility, something that helps you see your flywheel clearly. It's called the MOVE Supply Chain Diagnostic. In less than 15 minutes, this diagnostic will help you score each layer of your flywheel: your margins, operations, vendor, and execution. You can see where you're leaking: time, cash, or control. You can understand which layer to fix first and in what order. Get a simple roadmap to make your next growth cycle smoother and more profitable. It's not a quiz, it's a mirror, because once you see your supply chain clearly, you'll never unsee it. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right and still feel like something's off underneath, this diagnostic will show you why. It's fast, it's free, and it's built from the same framework we use with 7 and 8-figure DTC brands every single day. You'll get a personalized report breaking down your performance in each layer, so you know exactly where your system is strong and where it's breaking. And from there, you'll see what it actually takes to spin your own MOVE flywheel faster, cleaner, and without chaos. Here's what I want for you. I want you to stop guessing, stop patching leaks you cannot see. Stop thinking growth has to feel heavy, because it does not. Once you build your flywheel correctly, growth starts working for you instead of against you. Margin fuels operation. Operations empower vendors. Vendors support execution, and execution strengthens margin. That's the cycle that compounds. And it starts with clarity. So here's your next step. Click the button below, take the MOVE Supply Chain Diagnostic, find your leaks, fix your order, and start spinning your flywheel the right way. Because the truth is, your supply chain is already spinning. The only question is it compounding your growth or killing it? Let's make it work for you. I'll see you inside the diagnostic, and let's build your flywheel.